Picture this. It's late January 1942. You're 22 years old from Muskegon, Michigan, and you just escaped a German POW camp after 7 long months of brutal torture and starvation. You've been wandering around for days with no food or supplies when suddenly you encounter a Russian tank division. Now, you could ask them for food or for safety, but instead you beg them to put a gun in your hands and to fight by their side against the Hitler Nazi regime. Now, you've just become the only man to fight for both the United States and Soviet Union militaries during World War II. And that man is named Joseph R. Beyrle. Hello, everybody. Bruce here, back with another video. And today we're going to be trying something a little bit different. Now, I've always wanted to try my hand at video essays. However, I've never really had the courage to really put myself in front of a camera and talk about a subject that I've been interested in, mostly because I've just never really seen myself doing something like that, and I was never really confident in my ability to make a quality video. But, stuff with things like this, you'll never really know or get better until you try it out. So this is my first attempt. Now, I've always enjoyed making content. As you've seen on my YouTube channel, I've made quite a bit of video game content over the years. I also used to stream way back when, like early 2020, 2021. I actually maybe before that. And while I do enjoy making content, I never really enjoyed making video game content, mostly because video games are a hobby that I enjoy. And once I start streaming or making content about it, it really becomes a chore and it drains a lot of the enjoyment that I have from that hobby. And then I just don't want to do either thing. I don't want to play video games and I don't want to make content. Now, I've always wanted to try my hand at video essays because I feel like it's a good way to really make content and broaden my horizons when it comes to subjects that I'm interested in and learn about them. And then I get to make content on it. So this is going to be my first attempt at doing that. Now, I've already learned quite a bit when it comes to the scripting and researching for this video. And I will say it is a lot of work. And now that I'm doing the recording portion of this, I'm finding out that this is also very difficult. Now, I've never sat in front of a camera and spoken to it one-on-one like this. So it's a bit awkward for me. So if you guys have any pointers on what you want me to focus on improving, please let me know in the comments down below, whether it be the lighting. I actually don't even have a setup here. I have my camera on a workout bench next to a ring light right here. This is just my desk right here. And then I actually moved this here, so I had something on my wall. This is my dog, even though she looks demented in this picture. My girlfriend got this for me, and I love it because of that. Because it looks demented and because she got it for me. And then just a shelf of miscellaneous things. So I do plan on making this better in the future. But in regards to the format of this video and the quality of it, please let me know so that I know where I should start focusing on improving. But please keep in mind, it is just me making these videos. I'm a one-man show. I'm doing the researching, the scripting, the editing, which for me is the hardest part, and everything else. So please keep your constructive criticism or any tips within reason. Regardless of all of that, I really just want to say thank you to everyone who's been liking and leaving comments and tips for all of my videos. It really is a great motivator and a great help to the channel. And if you guys have any ideas on topics that you would like for me to discuss in the future, please leave them in the comments below. I do have a few ideas lined up in the works right now. They are going to take me a little while to get out. But if you guys have any future ideas, please let me know. And all right, bro. What is it? R3K. I haven't forgot about you. I will get to that AI video. I just need to find a good reason to talk about AI. Now, with all of that out of the way, today we're going to be talking about Joseph Robert Beyrle. Now, Mr. Beyrle is the only man in recorded history to have fought for both the United States and the Soviet Union during World War II. Now, my main goal with this video is to go over the broad strokes of Mr. Beyrle's time throughout the war in a fun and digestible way. My two main sources for this video are going to be the book Behind Hitler's Lines by Thomas H. Taylor. Now, I have read this book, and it is a biography of Mr. Beyrle's time within the war. It is a very good read. I did really enjoy this book when I read it. Unfortunately, it was damaged in delivery. It was raining the day that this got delivered, and it was only inside of one of those little paper bag packages, and they left it on the edge of my porch. So the exterior bag got soaked, and then the book itself also got wet. So the entire top part of this on the front edge got wet, and you can kind of see right here. I don't know if you can really see that. It is damaged right there. The main point of damage, though, is going to be down here. It is a bit shredded. It has started to come apart, which is very unfortunate. And then all of this right here also got wet. It's not too bad to where it's unreadable, but it is damaged, and I think I'm going to return it and just get a new copy and just give them instructions to put it in my mailbox so that that does not happen again. However, if you are interested in learning more about Mr. Beyrle's time within the war, this is a very good book to read. However, a lot of the minute details in this book are embellished. Now, it does go over the broad strokes of the events that happen, and they are, for the most part, very accurate. However, a lot of the smaller things are dramatized for the sake of either keeping the book on pace or to just kind of fill in details that otherwise would make it very difficult to understand what's going on, like the names of any soldiers that he may encounter, or just some time that may happen between one event to the other. Something may just be a little off or entirely made up just to keep the book on pace. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but for the purposes of this video, I did also look up other articles and interviews of Mr. Beyrle, and I have also used those to make this video as well. The main interview that I used is one that was conducted by the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Now, this is a project that their main goal is to interview and document the experiences of veterans throughout whichever war that they may have participated in, and they did do an interview of Mr. Beyrle himself. It is about an hour long, and it is very informative. So if you are interested in kind of going through, I'm not going to say quick because it is an hour, but if you are interested in listening to that, you don't really have to sit there and watch it because it is just a talking head shot of him. But it is very interesting. And because it is an interview of Mr. Beyrle, any details that may conflict within different articles or interviews or with this book, I'm going to just ignore those and defer to whatever Mr. Beyrle says in that interview. There are a few instances where details clash when it comes to certain events, and it can be a little bit confusing. So like I said, because of that, I'm just going to defer to whatever he says within that interview. Now, if you are interested about finding out more on your own, I will be leaving links in the description for this book and for the interview done by the GVSU YouTube channel. I would also highly recommend checking out any interviews that you may find on there. I did watch some on my own, and they are very interesting, and it is very cool to see veterans speaking about their experiences throughout whichever war they may have participated in. Now, with all of the formalities out of the way, we can talk about the man too mad to die, Joseph Robert Beyrle. Joseph Robert Beyrle was born August 25th, 1923 in Muskegon, Michigan. He was the third son born to Elizabeth and William Beyrle. His grandparents had immigrated from Germany in the 1800s, and they spoke German at home, making it his first language. Joseph was 6 years old when the Great Depression struck, and when his father lost his job, they were forced to move in with Joseph's grandmother. Mr. Beyrle has even stated one of his earliest memories was standing in government food lines with his father. However, this did not stop him from being a gifted athlete. In high school, he competed in football, baseball, basketball, and track, and he even ended up receiving a full ride scholarship to play baseball at Notre Dame. However, being 19 and freshly out of high school, uh, Mr. Byerly figured that he'd probably be drafted eventually, so he decided to enlist instead. Now, Joseph was inducted into the Army on September 17th, 1942, at just 19 years old. And after volunteering for its most revered and famous units, the paratroopers, he was given a psychological evaluation where he was asked why he joined the paratroopers and why he would willingly jump out of a perfectly good airplane. And he, like many others, admitted that the main reason they volunteered was for the 50 extra dollars that they would receive. Now, $50 may not sound like a lot to willingly jump out of an airplane for a military operation, but you have to keep in mind that this was in 1942, and 50 extra dollars was the equivalent of about an extra $1,000 per month that they would receive just for joining this unit. For basic training, Byerly was sent to Camp Toccoa, which for any HBO fans out there, it may sound familiar because it is the same training camp that was depicted in the hit series Band of Brothers. And just like in the show, the men in real life were expected to run Currahee, the steep 3-mile hill that the men can be seen trekking multiple times in full gear. In fact, the training was so intense that Colonel Sink, who was in command of the 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment, had his men march over 3 days from Camp Toccoa all the way to Atlanta. Now, this march lasted for 3 days and was a little over 137 miles. And the craziest part is that allegedly, Colonel Sink read in, I believe it was Reader's Digest, about the Japanese unit that had marched, I believe it was over 60 miles in 24 hours. And he believed that his men could do better. So he immediately had them beat that record by over 3 times the amount, which is absolutely insane. Upon completing his basic training, Joseph was assigned to I Company 3rd Battalion of the 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment of the 101st Airborne Division, aka the Screaming Eagles. Here, he specialized in radio communication and demolitions. He was then sent to Fort Benning in Georgia, where he earned the nickname Jumpin' Joe, because he would take the place of other paratroopers and do their required jumps for them during their training. And it actually got so bad that he almost got caught. Quote, one day, a cadre jump master consulted his manifest, stopped in front of Joe, and asked him if he had a brother going through the school. Joe sounded off, yes, Sergeant. He did. That his was an airborne family. Good, said the jump master. Knock out 25 push-ups for your brother and 25 more for yourself. So unfortunately, because of that, he did have to stop, but he made a little over $100 because he would accept $5 payments every time he would take the place of another paratrooper. Now, again, this is 1942, so I think that's a little over $2,000 just for doing jumps that he actually really loved doing. So it was basically free money to him. And soon they were shipped off to Ramsbury, England, to prepare for the Allied invasion into Europe. In January 1944, Byerly was selected to attend the British Jump School, where after 3 jumps, he received his British wings and proved that he could jump on either side of the Atlantic. However, in April of that year, while waiting for the invasion to begin, Byerly was approached by one of his colonels and was pretty much voluntold that he would be going on a secret mission into France. Now this mission was conducted by the Office of Strategic Services, aka the OSS, aka the predecessor to what would eventually become the CIA. Literally, the OSS became the CIA, which is pretty cool, in my opinion. Now, being that this was a secret mission into France, he actually did this jump twice. He was to jump into France and deliver gold bullion to French rebels. Each time he would jump in, deliver the gold, stay with them for a little while, eventually get picked up, and then he did it again in April and in May. Now, the crazy thing is, since he was doing this as a secret mission, if he was caught, he would be executed for being a spy, essentially. And considering what ends up happening to him, honestly, if these events had to happen to anyone, he was probably the best person to have been put through what he's eventually going to be put through. Basically, what I'm saying, if it had to be someone, it couldn't have been a more badass guy. And then on the night of June 5th, 1944, Staff Sergeant Beyrle and the rest of his unit loaded onto a C-47 and took off for the coast of Normandy. Upon reaching the shores, about 700 feet above the ground, his plane started taking heavy flak. Many of the other planes were either hit or destroyed outright in the air, and due to the intensity of the flak that they were receiving, they were forced to jump at just below 400 feet. Now, for reference, a lot of those planes were flying at 700 feet, or maybe a little bit higher or just below that, because 700 feet was the recommended jump distance. Now, the reason for that was that it gave enough time for the canopy to release and deploy, and they would also have enough time to surveil their surroundings so they weren't just jumping in blind. Granted, they were jumping at night, but I'm sure that it was just a general recommendation. But like many paratroopers that night, Beyrle landed alone and completely surrounded. He actually ended up landing on the roof of a church, and this isn't French, and I don't speak French, so forgive me for butchering this. Saint-Côme-du-Mont, or Saint-Côme-du-Mont, where he was receiving fire from a Nazi sniper. Luckily, he missed, and when he landed, he was able to make his way behind the church into a cemetery and then out onto the road. From there, he made his way towards his objective, which was to blow up two bridges above the, Duval River, just behind Utah Beach. Now, while on his way there, he found a substation that was supplying power to, I don't know exactly what, he didn't really explain that, and he blew it up with the thermite that he had landed with. And after blowing up that relay station, he continued towards his objective along Highway 13. But along his path, he encountered a group of Germans, and instead of just bypassing them, he decided that he was going to single-handedly ambush them. And I'll read you an excerpt from the book, and it's just so funny. Joe carefully pulled the pins from two grenades, one to roll down the road, the other to lob over the group for an airburst. Like parachutes, grenades are timed for 4 seconds. For the airburst, Joe released the handle, counted Hup 2002, and threw a grenade high. In the next second, he bowled the other grenade down the road. He heard it bounce before his airburst grenade went off, followed by the second small boom. He expected to hear screaming and yelling, but there was hardly any. Shit. This war wasn't like any war movie he'd seen. Knocking out a power station didn't bother the Germans. Now he'd peppered them with grenade fragments, and they'd hardly reacted. So unfortunately, it doesn't seem like he got any of them, and he decided that he was just going to ignore that and make his way towards his objective. Now, here's where the bad luck for him really begins. As he was making his way towards his objective, he went over a hedgerow. He didn't go through it. He climbed over top of it. And as soon as he hit the bottom on the other side, he turned around and was face to face with about 10 Germans. So he had accidentally just plopped himself right in the middle of a German machine gun nest. And they ended up taking him prisoner. If you don't know what a hedgerow is, it's basically just imagine a wall, like a brick wall, but instead of made of bricks, it's made of bushes or shrubs. They can be pretty thick. I don't know exactly how they were in Normandy in 1942, but I imagine if you had to climb over it to get past it, it was probably pretty thick. Likewise, there was Germans running around everywhere, so I'm sure that they were pretty tall in order to be even considered being used as concealment while he was moving around. After being taken prisoner, he was stripped of his weapons and taken to an underground German HQ. There, he was interrogated, but he only gave his name, rank, and serial number as per the Geneva Convention rules of war, after which he was moved back above ground into a temporary POW enclosure. The next day, as they marched along Highway 13, the column started taking fire from artillery, which killed and wounded both GIs and German soldiers alike. Beyrle was hit in the left cheek, his left butt cheek, by shrapnel and blown into a ditch. After he regained his composure, he helped tourniquet the legs of 2 American soldiers after they had been blown off. After the wounded had been picked up, he and 2 other GIs realized that they were alone on the road, and they decided to make a run for the brush, where he ended up becoming separated from the other 2. After an estimated 16 hours, he was recaptured and put on a truck to St. Lo, which is basically just a commune in France. Now, what's crazy is that after being captured again, he was beaten and had his dog tag taken by a German soldier. And this is really important because that German soldier would actually be killed, I think, 3 months later, holding those dog tags. And because of that, they assumed that he was Joseph Beyrle and marked him as KIA and actually notified his family that he had been killed in action. And he did not know this the entire time. As they entered the commune, he and the other prisoners were placed inside of a horse stable, and throughout the rest of the day and night, the commune was strafed and taking fire from U.S. planes. Fortunately, no one was killed or injured, and that night he and the other POWs had to listen to the commune around them just get absolutely obliterated by bombs. As morning broke, the only 2 buildings left standing were the stable and a church across the road, which they absolutely annihilated that entire area, and they were very lucky not to get blown to smithereens. After about a 6 to 10 hour march, they arrived at the village of Tessy-sur-Mer, which became known as Starvation Hill and was a holding place for POWs. Soon, Beyrle was moved to another interrogation center within France, where he says he was, quote, interrogated 20 to 24 hours a day. They were trying to get all the usual questions answered. Why me, a German, was fighting for the Jews. This is a quote. He didn't say this. I'm not saying this. Why me, a German, was fighting for the Jews Roosevelt and the Morgenthau against my own people. Sometime during the questioning, I called a German officer an SOB and woke up several days later in a hospital with a big headache and a bashed head, and later I was taken back to the monastery. They beat his ass, which is crazy. I mean, throughout this entire thing, his entire time in these prison camps, he's getting his ass beat. And props to him, he took it like a champ. Again, he was moved to Alencon, France, and held near a German airfield where he was able to volunteer to repair rail beds. Unfortunately, at the end of every day, U.S. planes would bomb and destroy the rail beds, so the work was discontinued after a few days. Again, he was moved, this time to Chartres, France, and after about 2 weeks of minimal food and water, they were marched into Paris. Here, they were marched through the middle of Paris, where they were spit on and pelted with rotten food by the citizens there. During his interview, and I have a lot of respect for Mr. Beyrle for this, he really strongly expressed that he suspected that this was a propaganda stunt set up in advance and that the French citizens were being forced to do this. He said that he and his men were being marched through the center of town, and they were having stuff thrown at them and spit at them, and they pretty much had bayonets in their back from the German soldiers, but he could also see German soldiers in the crowd, and he suspected that they were essentially there to force the citizens to do what they were doing, else they'd be shot or stabbed, which to me says a great deal about his character. That even after being captured, marched, and demonstrated against like this, that he was giving the benefit of the doubt to the French people because he knew that they were an occupied country. After this, they were stuffed 80 at a time into a 40 by 8 foot boxcar, and they were left there for 7 days and nights. And during his interview, he said that a lot of people in there were already extremely injured, and they had to just defecate on themselves. A lot. He said that there were some men that he knows died in that train car, but that there was really nothing that they can do about it. After about 5 days, their car had been hit by a strafing run, which killed about 10 men and wounded about 25 more. After this, they arrived in Stalag 21A in Limburg, which is Stalag 21, and then the letter are a set of prison camps. They were in different locations, and they each held different types of prisoners. Stalag 21A originally, I believe, housed only Polish prisoners, but later in the war, it started to hold French and British prisoners, and then eventually American prisoners as well. After being moved to Stalag 21A in Limburg, the group was finally registered as POWs with the International Red Cross, where they were given their ID numbers, tags, and had their photographs taken, which is where we actually get the infamous photo of Mr. Chad himself and the precursor to the Crimson Chin. Now, I don't know about you guys, but after everything that this man has been through, I don't know how he's alive. I'll be honest, after the first few days, never mind the interrogation, just getting hit in the head and my forehead, I'm done. I already have a very large head, and I already have neck issues from this very large head. Not to mention, I also have a flat back. I didn't get enough tummy time, so the back of my head is also flat. So you just one good hit, it's lights out for me. You're not getting anything else out of me. I'm dead. I'm gone. Here, they were separated based on nationality and rank, and then they were moved to Stalag 4B just outside of Berlin. On September 17th, 1944, they were moved again to Stalag 3C at, excuse me if I butcher this, Alter Drewitz. I don't know. I don't know what that is. Just outside of Krusten, Poland, and 45 miles east of Berlin. And they were actually the first American POWs to arrive at the camp, but it already held 10,000 Russian POWs, and about 200 to 300 of those were women. They had approximately 1,500 Americans, and they had actually grouped themselves into battalions, companies, and squads. They then actually formed committees. They had the security, escape, procurement, administration, and information committees. And Joseph Beyrle was actually a member of the escape and securities committee. I'm sure you can probably guess what each of those are. Unfortunately, I couldn't really find any information on what the administration committee did. But all the other ones, I'm sure you can guess. Security, they provide security. Escape, which he was on, they were looking for ways to escape constantly. Information, looking for information. Procurement, procuring just means that they gather things. So they were gathering items that they could use to escape or to bribe or even just probably food. And sometime in October of 1944, while they were working outside of the compound on a work detail, a wagon carrying potatoes passed his unit on the road. The men began liberating the potatoes and were shot at by the guards. Beyrle was unfortunately hit clean through his upper right arm, while the man next to him actually fell beneath the wagon and was crushed. I read on a couple of different things that when he fell under there, he either had his head crushed or his chest crushed. It was pretty inconsistent, but either way, that guy did not survive. Now, I bring up this specific incident because this wagon actually plays a very important role later down the line. But soon after, it was actually discovered that there was a leak amongst the American POWs, as a lot of their plans had to be scrapped and aborted due to the guards becoming suspicious of them and tightening security around the times that they were planning their escapes. Eventually, through misinformation, they were able to narrow down the man that had actually been giving information to the Germans. And they held a trial for him within the prison. It was a court martial. They charged him with treason and they actually found him guilty. They ended up executing the guy, dismembering his body, and stuffing him down the latrines, the toilets, which is pretty crazy. After they executed him, they actually made records of it so that they could take back to the U.S. And then it was discovered that this guy actually was not a United States soldier. He was a German national that had been placed in their group on their transfer from Stalag 4B to Stalag 3C in order to pretty much just spy on them. Later, a plan was actually formed to bribe one of the guards with anywhere between 10 to 20 packs of cigarettes. It was really inconsistent on how much he actually received. Now, the way that these soldiers would receive cigarettes is through International Red Cross care packages. They would receive food rations that would have packs of cigarettes in them. Now, keep in mind, this was in 1944, 1945. So a lot of these packs were probably 2 to 4 packs. So they'd have anywhere from 2 cigarettes to 4 cigarettes inside of them. And the brand of cigarette varied just on whichever ration they got. So it was pretty random. In Europe during World War II, it was actually extremely difficult to obtain tobacco, high quality tobacco. So United States made cigarettes were considered a luxury item. Now, again, this is in the 1940s. Smoking 2 packs a day was probably a very common occurrence for most men in and outside of the war. So you can imagine how much one would probably pay just to get their next smoke. Now, according to journalist Joel Sayre in the July 28th, 1945 issue of New Yorker, on the black market, a single cigarette costs from 15 to 20 marks, about $1.50 to $2 at the official rate of exchange, depending on its quality. American cigarettes are considered the best, and the standard black market price for a pack of 20 is 300 marks, or about $30. The value of a pack of Chesterfields can run as high as $75 to $90. That was in 1945. Adjusting to it for inflation, you're looking at anywhere between $500 to about $2,000 for a pack of 20. Now imagine being the guy that they were bribing. They handed him about 20 packs, probably 4 counts of cigarettes. The brands are going to vary there, and then adjusting that for inflation, they would have just handed him about $3,000 to $4,000 in I don't want, it's not liquid gold, it's dried up tobacco leaf gold. Now, this phenomenon actually got so bad that even after the war, United States branded tobacco pretty much replaced any type of official currency in Germany for about, I want to say, 3 years. Now, it wasn't official, it was on the black market, but that's just how strong the market for tobacco was, that you could pretty much just pay for anything you wanted in American branded cigarettes. What's even crazier is that it created a whole job market, and it was called, let me see, Kippensammlers, from the German word Kippe for cigarette butt and Sammler for collector. And these were pretty much just guys who collected cigarette butts. And again, 1940, so the cigarettes did not have filters on them. So the butts were just leftover portions of the cigarette that were not smoked. They would collect the cigarette butts, take out the unused tobacco, mix it with whatever other unused tobacco that they found, roll it into a new cigarette, and then sell that. The Germans even came up with a name for this whole phenomenon, and it was Zigarettenwahrung, or cigarette money. You just can't beat good old-fashioned American capitalism. The plan took place in early November 1944 under the cover of a moonless night. The plan had worked flawlessly, and Beyrle and 2 other men made their way to a train rail south of the camp. Now, when they boarded the train, they thought that it was going to take them to Poland, but it actually ended up taking them straight to Berlin. This is kind of the part. This is kind of the main part where there was a lot of conflicting information on what happened. A few reports say that they, um, when they arrived there, they were hiding out on the train. They met a man and asked for his help. They tried to bribe him. He said no and walked away. The second man that they spoke to did take the bribe and took the soldiers to the German underground, or the German rebels, in Berlin, where they hid out for about a week, and then eventually someone ratted them out, and the Gestapo came and took them away. Another report was that, and this is the one I'm going to go with because Mr. Beyrle, in the interview, stated that the second man that they spoke to took took the bribe, said, "Yeah, I'll take you guys to the German underground," and then just took them straight to the Gestapo instead. And if anything, that one's just the funnier story. Either way, it's not funny because what's about to happen to these guys. After they were taken by the Gestapo, they were brutally beaten and tortured for about the next 2 weeks. And they were actually slated to be executed. But during World War II, POWs were considered the property of the German Wehrmacht, or the German army. So before they were executed, a group of German officers actually came to where they were being held and threatened to kill the Gestapo if they did not hand them over. And the Gestapo was basically just a secret police force, so they didn't I guess, technically have any military jurisdiction. So they ended up handing them over. Otherwise, they probably would have been shot. Now, while they were saved from being executed, unfortunately, other than just being alive, I wouldn't really consider it a blessing that this happened, because they were taken back to Stalag 3C, but they were put into solitary confinement for escaping. Mr. Beyrle was actually put into solitary confinement for about 30 days, and they put him in a box that, let me see, it was 6 foot long, 4 feet wide, and about 5 feet tall. And Mr. Beyrle is 6'1", so he could not stand or lie down. So he pretty much just kind of had to crouch there the entire time. The temperatures there, so he's pretty much put in like a warehouse. So it wasn't particularly cold, warm in there. So the temperatures were below freezing for a majority of the time that he was there. And he even himself states, "I don't know how I survived." Quote, "I don't know how I survived, but again, we got caught up in the politics of war." That was a new POW camp, so the International Red Cross was making an inspection. They had to let us out because it was against the rules to punish us for escaping. Beyrle ended up returning to camp, and his fellow prisoners had actually taken his extra cigarettes and bought extra food rations and fed it to him so that he could regain his strength. Now, in early January of 1945, they had a couple of radios. I think it was contraband within the camps, and they had heard that the Russian army was about 50 to 100 miles away. Now, if you've ever seen Thor Ragnarok, the get help scene, that's pretty much what Beyrle and a couple of other prisoners did. One of them faked having a heart attack, and he and another guy pretty much did get help so that they could get out of there. Meanwhile, the other prisoners faked a fight so that the guards' attention would be taken away. Beyrle, another man, and the dude that was faking a heart attack made their way out while carrying that guy on a stretcher. And remember when I brought up that wagon with the potatoes and the guy that went under it and got crushed? Well, he was passing by again. He would pass by about every single day around the same time. And so when they made their way out of there, he had 3 barrels on his wagon, and they jumped inside and hid out there. Of course, they were eating the potatoes and stuff, but they didn't make it very far, unfortunately. The wagon ended up tipping over, and when they made a run for it, the 2 other men with Beyrle were actually gunned down, so he was the only one that was able to escape at that time. Now, he ended up just wandering around for about a week. His main goal was to avoid being caught because they were coming after him, and to find the Russian army. and he ended up staying in a hayloft. Uh, and that night that he stayed in the hayloft, a Russian tank division had actually made camp at the barn right outside. Now, he did not approach them the first night because he wasn't sure if they were friendly or if they were even Russian. But the second night, they ended up coming back, and that's when he approached them. He first spoke to the Russian commissar. Now, if you don't know what a commissar is, if you've ever seen Enemy at the Gates, whenever you see those guys just bellowing through those megaphones at the other Russian soldiers to fight for their country and to not turn back, that's those guys. They're also the ones that will gun you down if you turn around. So he ended up asking him in broken Polish if he could join them. Now, the commissar ended up saying no, but the tank commander, who was a woman, approached them and ended up saying yes. Now, her and the commissar argued for a bit, and quote, I told them I wanted to go with them and defeat Hitler. And she says, da da. And I knew what that was. Now, it's to my understanding that the woman who was in charge, well, she actually wasn't in charge. I believe the commissar outranked her, but she ended up getting what she wanted anyway. Now, it's believed the woman that he met was Alexandra Samushenko. He did not know this at the time. It is just very strongly believed that this was her because she was really only the only woman that held the rank of tank commander during World War II for the Russians. Now, she was assigned to either the 1st or the 6th Guards Tank Army. So she did run her own division of tanks. Now, she's her own interesting character. Her entire family was killed, I believe, before the war, which is why she ended up joining. And then she did command her own tank battalion. Unfortunately, she did not live through the war, and there are differing reports on her death. They all end up. She does die on the same day. It was March 23rd. I'm sorry, not March 23rd. She died March 3rd, 1945, at the age of 23, which is insane. And then there's different versions of how she died. They're generally the same, but one of them is she either was run over at night by a friendly tank during a night mission, or while they were fighting the Germans, a German vehicle ended up running her over, and that's how she pretty much died of the wounds that she sustained from either getting run over by a friendly tank or a German vehicle. And it's unfortunate that that happened. Now, at this time, tanks that they were in were M4 Shermans. These were on loan from the United States during the Lend-Lease Act, which had actually replaced the Cash and Carry Act, because a lot of countries that the United States were selling weapons to were either running out of money and could no longer pay for supplies up front, or they just could not sell to them directly because of the Neutrality Act. Either way, she puts a PPSH 41 in his hands, gives him a couple of drum magazines, and tells him to hop on the tank. Now, from here, Sergeant Beyrle really got to experience the horrors of the Eastern Front during World War II. He described an incident, and I believe it was the night that he actually met the Russians for the first time, where they slaughtered a couple. I believe it was a farmer and his wife, fed them to their pigs, and then later ate the pigs. With a nod from the squad leader, the farmer and his wife were blasted with submachine guns, which cut them through the middle like a chainsaw. They recoiled against the wall of their house. Some viscera stuck and froze. The Russians stood there till the bodies stopped twitching, Joe recounts. Then the axemen started chopping them up while the rest of the squad went off to find wood and build lean-tos. I think the reason they didn't occupy the house was because officers were sure to boot them out. A dozen chops, and in no time the German couple was food for the hogs they'd fed yesterday. Joe watched them carefully to pick the right time and man to approach. That would be the senior NCO, whose first order of the day was to slaughter the hogs. Ghoulishly, Joe wondered if there would be any parts of the two Germans left. There were, but just the bones picked clean. He waited till the Russians had cooked up some pork and had a good breakfast of back fat and kaska. Now I'm going to read some passages from the book here describing his time with the Russian tank crew over the next few weeks, because there's a few passages here that are quite interesting and fun to read. Now, like I said in the beginning of this video, this book really reads like fiction. It is a true story, but like I said, a lot of the minute details are embellished or just flat out made up. But that allows for the story to be a lot more interesting. What I started off as was an infantryman on Major's tank. That's what he referred to Alexandra as, because I don't believe that he actually knew her name, which is why it's not really confirmed that this is who the tank commander was, but he does refer to her as Major. I'd be a few feet from the CO, and a battalion commander usually doesn't get killed, unless he's Bob Wolverton. I wanted a weapon and asked for a Tommy gun like the one I jumped into Normandy with. There were plenty of Lend-Lease Tommy guns in Major's battalion, but no one wanted to give his up. So I was armed with a PPSH-41, the Russian submachine gun they'd use on the farm couple. It had 70 slugs in a drum, with some grenades to stuff in my overcoat pockets. I was ready to get back into the war. Joe asked for a steel helmet, but was told niet. Sorry, I gotta turn the page. We are a tank battalion and wear pile caps, not helmets. They gave him one, a furry wool cap with their ear flaps and rayon padding. His new buddies weren't quite sober when he was taken out to test fire the PPSH-41. It was one of the simplest automatic weapons in the world, GI proof. It would have been called in the U.S. Army, with nothing that could be screwed up, only the trigger to pull, no safety. 2 parts to separate for cleaning, and they could be put back together only one way. All Joe remembers of her battalion's designation is that it was the 6th Guards Tank Army, part of the 1st Belarusian Front. Major commanded about 500 of the 7 million soldiers who had been struggling their way west for 2 years since the war turned around at Stalingrad, now 1,000 miles to the rear. Casualties had been so horrific that there were few veterans with more than 4 months' service in her unit. Manpower was so scarce that half the troops were teenage and the tank crews women. This made a virtue of necessity, as Joe saw it, because he found women to be more mechanically adept than Russian men, who treated a tank like a horse, put in fuel, and let it ride till it dies. Eventually, after being with the crew for a couple of weeks, they happened to make their way back to Stalag 3C, which was the POW camp that Sergeant Beyrle had escaped from. And using his demolition expertise, he actually blew open the vault that they had there and pretty much just robbed all of the money that they had. So it was American dollars, British pounds, I believe, Polish currency, German currency, and then just miscellaneous gold coins. He tied them in a satchel and then threw them on the back of the tank, and they got out of there. He was actually also able to retrieve his POW records, and he took those so that he could prove who he was, because he no longer had his dog tags, if you'll remember. So this is how we were able to, this is how he was able to recover his POW photograph. After the liberation of the POW camp, Beyrle actually stuck with the tank crew after that to continue fighting, but unfortunately their column was hit by some Stuka dive bombers, and he was injured. I think he took some shrapnel to the leg, was blown into a ditch, and then went unconscious from there. He later woke up in a hospital in Poland and was treated, although he couldn't speak to anyone really, because no one spoke English and he did not speak Russian or Polish. Eventually, after about 2 days, he was approached by General Zhukov. Now, General Zhukov, or Georgy Konstantinovich Zhukov, served as a deputy commander-in-chief during the war under Joseph Stalin. Now, he was actually the man in charge of the Belarusian front, the 1st Belarusian front, and he actually came to visit Joseph because he heard about who he was and wanted to meet him because he was very intrigued about an American soldier fighting alongside Russian forces in the Russian army. He was actually also the man that accepted the German Instrument of Surrender, which was just a legal document of Germany surrendering after the war. And then after World War II, he was actually so popular that Joseph Stalin, who was the leader of the Soviet Union, demoted him and stripped him of all his power because he saw him as a threat. And then when Joseph Stalin died, he regained some of his positions and power. and then ended up dying in 1974 after he retired from being the Minister of Defense for the Soviet Union. Now, since General Zhukov did not speak English and Sergeant Beyrle did not speak Russian, they had to communicate through a translator, but even then it was very difficult for them to communicate. However, Sergeant Beyrle was able to communicate that he needed papers that to help him get back to the Western Front, or just basically back to the United States, because he did not have his dog tags and he did not believe that his POW records would be enough to identify him as who he was. So General Zhukov agreed and sent him a letter the next day. Unfortunately, Sergeant Beyrle could not read the letter because it was completely in Russian. The only thing that he knows is that it was a letter stating that he was an American soldier, saying that he is who he says he is and that he needs help getting back to the United States, or getting back to Moscow specifically. That way he could get to the embassy there, the United States Embassy, and then be sent back to the States. After about another day there at the aid station, he made his way into Warsaw, where his wounds had started to become infected, so he needed to be treated. So he asked a man on the side of the road if he could help him, and the man agreed. Joseph Beyrle thought that he was going to take him to an aid station or a hospital, but instead he actually took him to a church that was run by the Sisters of St. Joseph. And there, all of the nuns were acting as nurses and doctors and helping the wounded and everything. Now, this really stood out to Sergeant Beyrle because growing up, he was taught by Dominican nuns throughout his entire public education. And it really stuck with him that these sisters were putting themselves in harm's way to help people that needed help. Now, I looked up information on the Sisters of St. Joseph. I couldn't really find any specifics about those particular nuns at that church, but the Sisters of St. Joseph are actually really cool because during World War II, they were an organization. Organization's kind of a strong word, but they were spread out across Poland. And not only did they risk their lives doing humanitarian aid to wounded soldiers and civilians, they actually assisted a lot of Jewish refugees on the run from the Nazi regime. They helped them escape, they hid them, they aided them, fed them, and if they were caught doing any of those things, more than likely they would have been executed or thrown in prison. And I think that that's very commendable and very selfless of them, and I respect them a great deal for that. And after about a week at the convent, he was eventually taken to Moscow, to the outskirts of Moscow. And there he showed his letter from General Zhukov to a colonel. And the colonel took the letter and returned with an escort. The colonel took the letter and returned with an escort to take Sergeant Beyrle to the U.S. Embassy. Unfortunately, during his excitement of getting back home, he forgot to get the letter back from the colonel, which is why, to this day, we don't know exactly what it said. From here, he was taken to the American Embassy in the Red Square, and he approached the guard at the gate and told him that he was an escaped POW and that he was looking to get home. This guard at the gate called the sergeant at arms. The sergeant at arms called the colonel, and they debriefed Sergeant Beyrle and ended up feeding him, clothing him, gave him a hot shower, and let him stay there for the night. Unfortunately, and this is where things got a little hairy for Sergeant Beyrle, is because remember that German soldier that took his dog tags and ended up dying about 3 months later? Well, he was counted as Joseph Beyrle being KIA, killed in action, and because of this, they grew a little bit suspicious of Joseph Beyrle because in their records it showed that Joseph Beyrle was dead. Fortunately, the colonel who was the one interacting with him believed him. He knew that he was an American. He just wasn't sure if he was exactly who he said he was. So they moved him a few buildings down into a hotel and had him under watch for a few days. Unfortunately, Sergeant Beyrle kind of did not like this. It drove him a little bit insane, so he ended up attacking the guards. He did not win that fight because he was still emaciated from having been starved and beaten for over 7 months. But luckily, There was no real punishment after that. They were able to sort it out. He got fingerprinted, and because they even back then they had their fingerprints taken when they were inducted into the army, and they were able to verify who he was and send him home. On April 1st, 1945, Sergeant Joseph R. Beyrle was put on a boat back to the United States, and on April 11th, he landed on U.S. soil. He was given a 30-day delay before he had to report to, I forget where he said, and on the 21st of April, he was reunited with his family. Now, I cannot imagine being his family, because they were updated on his status throughout the war. So they were told when he first became a POW, and then they were told when he was reported as KIA because of that German soldier. And then eventually he was reported as a POW again, and then that he was on his way home. But I cannot imagine being his family, hearing that news. And the craziest part is they actually held a funeral mass for him. Since they didn't receive a body or anything, they held a funeral mass for him in their local church and had put him to rest. And then later on down the line, they hear word that he is alive. His family, his parents specifically, actually received his GI benefits for his perceived death, and they ended up returning that money when he returned home, which is very nice of them. Personally, I don't know if I would have done that, but it was a different time. Eventually, he was moved to Vaughn General Military Hospital, where he was given continuous delays before he had to report back for duty. And on November 28th, 1945, Sergeant Joseph R. Beyrle was honorably discharged from the military. And after about a year of being discharged from the military, Mr. Beyrle ended up marrying his wife, Miss Joanne Hollowell, on September 14th, 1946. They had 3 lovely children, 1 daughter and 2 sons, and he ended up grandfathering 7 children after that. What I thought was really neat is that he actually got married in the same church that his funeral mass was held in, which is just so cool, honestly. And after the war, Mr. Beyrle, for the next 28 years, worked for the Brunswick Corporation, which was a manufacturing corporation within the States, and ended up retiring from there as a supervisor. And then on June 6th, 1994, Joseph Beyrle was invited to the White House for a special ceremony where he was decorated with medals by President Bill Clinton and President of Russia, Boris Yeltsin. Now, the Soviet Union had actually already collapsed back in 1991. President Yeltsin was actually the president of the new Russian government at the time. So I'm actually going to read off his awards and decorations. So we're going to start off with and I'm just reading the list here. So he was awarded the Combat Infantryman Badge, the Parachutist Badge with 1 Jump Combat Star, a Bronze Star, a Purple Heart with 4 Oak Leaf Clusters, a Prisoner of War Medal, Army Good Conduct Medal, American Campaign Medal, European, African, Middle Eastern Campaign Medal with 2 Service Stars and Arrowhead Device, World War II Victory Medal, and then here's where we get into the Soviet Union medals. The Croix, this is French actually. The Croix de Guerre, I don't know how to pronounce that, but moving on. And then we have the Order of the Red Banner, Order of the Red Star, Medal for the Liberation of Warsaw, Medal for the Victory over Germany in the Great Patriotic War, 1941 to 1945, Medal of Zhukov, and finally the Jubilee Medal, 50 Years of Victory in the Great Patriotic War, 1941 to 1945. Sadly, Mr. Beyrle ended up passing away on December 12, 2004, while on a visit to Toccoa, Georgia, where he trained as a paratrooper. He passed away in his sleep due to congestive heart failure, and he was shortly thereafter buried with full military honors in the Arlington National Cemetery. In 2010, there was a wartime exhibit dedicated to Mr. Beyrle's time within the war and to his life. It was shown in Moscow and 3 other Russian cities. It was also shown in New Orleans, Omaha, Muskegon, and Toccoa. The exhibit is now on permanent display in Muskegon at the USS Silversides Museum. In 2005, a plaque was dedicated to Mr. Beyrle at the Saint-Côme-du-Mont Church, And in 2014, there was a permanent installation done there. And in 2024, the street that runs alongside the church was renamed to Rue Joseph Beyrle in dedication to him. Now, I did see one article that said that Mikhail Kalishnikov had actually presented Mr. Beyrle with a rifle in celebration of the Moscow Victory Day parade, but I couldn't find what year it was, and it was the only article that mentioned this, and I couldn't find a single other one that said that as well as the interview that he did, the couple of interviews he did. None of them mentioned it either. So take that with a grain of salt. If it is true, that is pretty cool. But at the same time, like I said, I couldn't really confirm how accurate that is because I couldn't find any other information on it other than that single article. And it was a single paragraph and it didn't even give a date. And that, everyone, is the story of Joseph Robert Beyrle. I hope you all really enjoyed the video. This was a lot of fun making, but also really stressful, but honestly very rewarding. I hope that it comes out decent and that it's to all of your satisfaction. If you notice some minor changes in the setup and the lighting and everything, that's actually because I recorded this over 2 days. And between those 2 days, I ordered a box light. So I ended up setting that up because previously I only had a ring light. But now I have a box light, and then I also ordered a tripod because I had my camera set up on a workout bench and a workout mat underneath that to kind of prop it up. Now we're looking a little bit better. And yes, I did save this shirt to wear it for the second day to keep everything consistent. But anyways, I hope you all really enjoyed the video. Again, I do have some ideas in the works, but if you guys have any ideas that you would like to suggest, I will definitely take a look at them if you leave them down in the comments below. Again, I will leave a link to this book in the description, as well as to the interview with Mr. Beyrle on the GVSU YouTube channel. Again, I highly recommend checking both of those out if you would like to get into more detail about his story. They're both very interesting, and especially this book, it is a very good read. I really enjoyed it. Again, it reads a lot like fiction, even though it is a biography of him. So even if you're not really interested in biographies, this actually just reads as a very entertaining piece of literature on its own. If you look it up online, you might see a book listing for The Simple Sounds of Freedom. It is the same book. It was just renamed. I'm not entirely sure why to Behind Hitler's Lines, but it is the same book. If you order the one with the old title, though, you will be getting If you order the one with the old title, though, you will be getting a hardcover copy of the book, and they're going to be pretty old because those stopped being printed when the name was changed. And again, of course, if you guys have any suggestions on things that you would like for me to focus on or work on, please leave them down in the comments below. And I definitely take any type of help or criticism very seriously because I want to improve my content. But again, just keep in mind, it is just me, one-man show, and I do also have a full-time job. So things are going to be slow as they go, especially as I start to get used to doing this. But again, I had a lot of fun, and I feel like I'll be able to really speed up the process once I am able to streamline, especially the scripting portion of making these videos. Lastly, I really appreciate everyone who watches and supports, and I hope to see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.